At a tense family dinner in a quaint Irish village, Clara, a 22-year-old lawyer, discovers a chilling betrayal when she finds a note under the table with her work password in her grandmother's handwriting. This sparks a chain of events exposing her grandparents' scheme to access confidential files for her uncle, leading to his arrest and a confrontation that shatters the family. What would you do if your family betrayed your trust for their own gain? Share your thoughts in the comments, like, and subscribe for more gripping tales. The rain pattered against the windows of my parents' cottage in Dingle, Ireland, where the salty sea air clung to every surface. Family dinners held every few months were a forced ritual of togetherness, more like a play where everyone recited tired lines. The oak table gleamed with my mother's best china, a slightly overcooked lamb roast, and boiled potatoes that tasted of duty. My daughter, Clara, 22 and fresh from law school, sat across from me, her face a mask of polite exhaustion. She landed a prestigious job at a Dublin firm, handling sensitive cases, divorce custody, the kind that made you double-check locks at night. My husband, Liam, and I arrived 5 minutes late, my calculated balance between avoiding prep work and dodging my mother's scolding. My brother, Sean, 38, lounged at the table's head like a fallen king. He called himself between ventures, a polite way of saying he lived rent-free in our parents' attic, scrolling far-right forums and nursing grudges. His wife, Fiona, and their son were absent, tangled in a bitter divorce no one dare mention, like a bruise we all ignored. My parents fussed over Sean, refilling his plate, their voices dripping with pity. Clara fielded my mother's questions about her job with practiced grace, deflecting outdated advice about stable careers, as if we were stuck in the 1950s. My father, meanwhile, droned on, quoting the Irish Times articles no one asked for, his voice drowning out the room. Sean sighed dramatically, his life an endless injustice. I tuned it out, saving my energy for when the passive-aggressive jabs got creative. Then it happened. Clara's fork slipped, clattering onto the stone floor. She ducked under the table to retrieve it, a fleeting, clumsy moment. But when she resurfaced, her face was drained of color, her hands trembling faintly. She leaned toward me, her breath sharp against my ear. "We need to leave. Now." Her voice was a knife, urgent and cold. I whispered, "What's wrong?" She didn't blink, her eyes glassy. "You didn't look under the table." My heart thudded, a primal warning before my mind caught up. Something was terribly wrong, and the air in the room felt heavier than the rain outside. My pulse raced as I bent down, pretending to adjust my shoe, and spotted a folded scrap of paper tucked against the table leg. I reached for it, but Clara snatched it before I could unfold it, her hand shaking harder now. She opened it, her jaw clenching so tightly I heard a faint click. "We're leaving," she said, her voice low but unyielding. Liam didn't argue. He loathes these dinners more than I do. We mumbled an excuse, work emergency, headache, something vague but urgent, and were out the door in minutes. My parents' raised eyebrows followed us, but Sean didn't even glance up, lost in his own sulk. In the car, Clara stared out the window, the paper crumpled in her fist. The rain streaked the glass, mirroring the tension inside. "What is it?" I asked, my voice thinner than I intended. She handed me the note. In my mother's unmistakable, looping handwriting was, "Clover Shield 92. I read aloud, confusion knotting my stomach. "Clara, what?" She cut me off, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's my password, my work password." The words landed like stones. "You didn't write it down?" I asked, grasping for another explanation. "No," she said, her eyes glassy with dread. "Never. And that's Nana's handwriting." The air in the car thickened, my pulse hammering in my neck. Liam gripped the wheel, silent but tense. "They must have watched me type it," Clara said, her voice cracking. "Or set up a camera. I don't know how, but they got it." I stared at the note, my mother's familiar script now sinister, like a betrayal scrawled in ink. I'd seen the handwriting on birthday cards, shopping lists, and now, impossibly, my daughter's confidential password. Why would they do this? I asked, my voice faltering. Clara's eyes stayed fixed on the road, her voice turning cold. I'm going to find out. The drive back to our Galway flat was silent, the rain a relentless drumbeat. I kept replaying the dinner. The forced smiles, my parents doting on Sean, their overly warm invitations for Clara to work at their house. Something ugly was unraveling, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was bigger than a single note. Clara's hand still trembled, clutching the paper like it might burn her. Whatever was under that table, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a deliberate act, and we were about to uncover its cost. Back at our flat, Clara went straight to her work laptop, her fingers flying across the keys with a mix of fury and fear. I hovered in the doorway, afraid to break her focus, my heart pounding like it knew something I didn't. The glow of the screen lit her face in harsh angles, her eyes narrowing as she clicked through files. Then she froze, her breath catching. "This is bad," she said, her voice hollow, like she was staring into an abyss. They accessed Fiona's file. My stomach dropped. Fiona, Sean's estranged wife, was a client at Clara's firm. Her case sealed, domestic abuse, custody, a restraining order. Clara hadn't known. She wasn't assigned to it. But someone had used her login to download the entire file. When I asked, my voice barely steady. "Yesterday," she said, "while I was at lunch with Nana and she showed me the logs, timestamps, IP addresses, her user ID, all pointing to an unauthorized access from my parents' cottage. They knew Fiona was a client," Clara said, her voice sharp with betrayal. "That's why they kept asking me to work there. The coffee, the lunches, the we miss you, it was all set up to get to my laptop." My chest tightened, the pieces falling into place. My parents had turned their home into a trap, using Clara's trust to help Sean. "If this gets out," Clara said, closing her laptop with a snap, "my career is over. It's my login. It looks like I did it." That night, my mother called, her voice a frantic mix of panic and performance. "Sean's been arrested," she said, as if it were my fault. Fiona called the guards. He just wanted to see his son. I pressed her, my hand shaking. "How'd he find her address?" A long pause. "He found it," she said vaguely. I hung up, my throat tight. Clara, overhearing, leaned against the wall, her eyes dark. "They used the file," she said. "The address. That's why he showed up at her door." The truth settled like damp cold. My parents had exploited Clara's access to get Fiona's location, handing it to Sean, who violated his restraining order. The consequences were already spiraling, and Clara was caught in the crossfire, her future at stake because of their betrayal. We didn't call ahead. The next morning, we drove back to Dingle, the cottage looking smaller under a gray, unforgiving sky. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy, charged with what was coming. My father opened the door, expecting pleasantries, his smile faltering when he saw our faces. Clara didn't sit, standing in the living room like a soldier ready for battle. "You stole my password," she said, her voice steady but searing. "You took me out to lunch, so Sean could use my laptop." My mother's face hardened, her lips pursing as if we'd insulted her cooking. My father crossed his arms, his posture defensive. He needed to know what Fiona was saying. My mother said, her tone dismissive, "It's not like he hurt anyone." Clara's eyes blazed, her hands clenched at her sides. "It was a sealed file," she said. "Everything's logged under my name. I could lose my job, my license, my entire future." My father shrugged, infuriatingly casual. "They'll understand. You didn't mean to." Clara laughed, a bitter sound that cut through the room. "Intent doesn't matter. You used it to help Sean, and now I'm the one who'll pay." My mother's voice softened, manipulative, the way it always did when she wanted to deflect. "When you're a parent, you'll understand," she said. I stepped forward, my own anger rising. I am a parent, I said, my voice shaking, and I'd never do this to my child. The room fell silent, the weight of our words sinking in. My parents didn't respond, their faces a mix of defiance and discomfort. Clara's eyes never left them, her stare a challenge they couldn't meet. I thought of all the times I'd stayed quiet, swallowed my hurt to keep the peace, but not today. We left without another word, the cottage door closing behind us like a final verdict. In the car, Clara stared out the window, her silence louder than any argument. At a stoplight, I said, "They didn't care what this would do to you." She didn't look at me, her voice low. "They never have." The truth stung, but was clear now. Their loyalty was to Sean, always Sean, no matter who got hurt. The drive back to Galway was quiet, but it wasn't aimless. We were done circling their lies. Clara didn't hesitate. The next morning, she came downstairs with her laptop in a zippered folder, her face set in that calm, focused expression she gets before a big exam or a fight. She made toast but didn't eat it, her movements precise, like she was conserving energy for what lay ahead. Liam offered her a ride. She shook her head, grabbed her bag, and left without a word. I knew she was reporting them, and the silence felt heavier than if she'd shouted her plans. She returned hours later, looking like she'd aged overnight. "I'm on leave," she said, hanging her coat. "They're investigating. They'll talk to Nana and the next." She stood at the sink, holding a glass of water in both hands, staring at the wall like it might offer answers. That night, Clara sat me down, her laptop under one arm, her phone in hand. "They're blaming me," she said, her voice flat. "The firm spoke to them. They said I accessed a file myself, that I was helping Sean." She laughed, a hollow sound. "They're rewriting it." I asked, "Do you have proof?" She raised an eyebrow, opened her phone, and played a recording from the confrontation. Her voice, sharp and clear. "You stole my password. You took me out to lunch so Sean could use my laptop." My mother's reply cold. "He needed to see what she was saying." My father's flat tone. "You weren't the one who looked." Then my mother again. "It's just a job, Clara. For Sean, it's his life." Clara hit pause. "This should be enough," she said, attaching the file to an email and sending it to her firm without a word in the body. Days later, the firm verified everything. Logs, IP addresses, timestamps, all airtight. Clara's evidence cleared her, but the toll was visible. She was reinstated, her record clean, but her eyes carried a new weight, a distance from the family she'd once trusted. Sean's custody case collapsed. Fiona got full custody and a permanent restraining order. My parents were named complicit, barred from contact with Fiona or her son. The village whispered, but Clara and I stayed away, rebuilding trust in each other, not in a family that chose betrayal. The fallout came swiftly. Sean was released on bail, but lost everything in court. Fiona's lawyer secured full custody, a permanent restraining order, and flagged Sean as high risk, no contact allowed, not even a postcard. He slunk back to my parents' attic, sleeping late, blaming the system, his bitterness filling the cottage like damp. My parents faced their own consequences, named as hostile third parties, barred from Fiona and her son, their role in the breach etched into court records. The village noticed. Cousins stopped coming to Sunday tea. Neighbors avoided eye contact. The damage wasn't loud, but it stuck, a quiet unraveling of their place in the community. Clara returned to work, her record clean, but she didn't celebrate. The distance between her and those who looked the other way grew, a silent boundary she didn't need to explain. I blocked my parents' numbers after the court date, my fingers trembling as I typed a message I never sent. "You don't get to hurt her again." I stood in our kitchen, watching Clara work at the table. Her laptop's glow softer now, less like a warning. She was the same girl, but I saw her clearly, strong, steady, unbroken. I still wonder if we went too far, or not far enough. Could we have forgiven them, or was cutting ties the only way? The cottage, The dinners, the lies, they're behind us, but the questions linger. Did we do the right thing, or was there another path? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that cut to the bone.